Alright, hello my histopath classes, okay, my histopath lecture classes. So for this video, so again, this is a pre-recorded video. I know that we're supposed to have a Google Meet today, but unfortunately, okay, I'm having some problems with my connection. So again, katulad naman nung na-experience natin nung first grading, hindi pa maayos talaga ang connection ko, especially during this time of the day, okay? And so I opted to make a pre-recorded video instead so that we will be able to cover the entire clearing process, okay? So, yes, in short, for this video, I will be discussing the next step that we have to perform in tissue processing, and that is the clearing step. Okay, what are the purposes of clearing? And yes, ano bang ibig sabihin ng clearing? What are we trying to do when we are performing the process or the step of clearing your tissue samples, okay? So number one purpose of the process of clearing is the removal of your dehydrating agent, and we are replacing it with a solvent, okay? So that means the different clearing reagents or the different reagents that we use for clearing, they are generally referred to as your solvents. Okay? Since one of the purposes of clearing is to remove your dehydrating agents, okay? Another term that we use to refer to the clearing process is dealcoholization. Okay, dealcoholization. Okay, so from the term itself, dealcoholization, you are removing your alcohol. Okay, why? Because take note that the reagent that we usually use for dehydration are your alcohols. Okay? So basically, if we are talking about your routine process, when we say clearing, the dehydrating agent that we are trying to remove is actually your alcohol. So that's why in some references, the clearing, okay, is otherwise referred to as your de-alcoholization or the removal of your alcohol, which is the routinely used reagent for dehydration. Okay? So apart from the removal of your dehydrating agent, okay, the term clearing, yes, the term clearing actually comes from the fact that in this particular process, so this involves making your tissue samples transparent, okay, or translucent. So ginagawa natin siyang clear, in short, okay? So we are making your tissue sample clear, we are making your tissue sample transparent or translucent. What is the purpose of making, okay, your tissue sample transparent or translucent? So the transparency, okay, of your tissue sample, this is significant in microscopy, okay? So remember that your tissue samples, they are inherently opaque. Okay, so they have a characteristic opacity in them. So in order for us to allow, okay, the visible light that we use or the beam of light that is needed in order for us to perform light microscopy, okay, you have to remove or to overcome the opacity that is present in your tissue samples. Okay? Ulitin ko ha, so may I just emphasize it. So the clearing process makes your tissue samples transparent or translucent. Why? Because you have to overcome the opacity that is present in your tissue samples. Okay, so the opacity that is present in your tissue sample, it will prevent your tissue sample from being penetrated by the beam of light that is needed in light microscopy. Okay? So in the laboratory, okay, in the histopathology section of the laboratory, what type of examination or study do we usually perform? It's light microscopy. Okay? So how are you going to facilitate examining your tissue sample via light microscopy if the beam of light is not able to penetrate your tissue, okay, your tissue sample or your tissue slides? Nakuha? Ayan. So, yes, that's why you have to make your tissue sample transparent or translucent in order to allow the beam of light, okay, which is basically the principle that is involved in the microscopic techniques that we perform in the laboratory. Okay? Diba? Just to recall your knowledge in human histology, we have two types of microscopy. We have your light microscopy, and then the other one is your electron microscopy. They differ in the type of beam that penetrates your tissue slides. Okay, so again, for light microscopy, from the term itself, so we make use of a beam of light. Okay, for electron microscopy, again, from the term itself, so we make use of a beam of electrons. Okay, ayan. So if you do not make your tissue sample transparent or translucent, they are or they will appear as opaque. Okay, opaque areas, and so you will not be able to clearly see the details which is supposed to be examined or observed by the pathologist. All right, so those are the purposes of the clearing process, or otherwise referred to as your dealcoholization. Okay, class or classes, take note that not all dealcoholizing agents are clearing agents and vice versa. So that means there are certain reagents which are able to clear only but not dealcoholize. And there are also other reagents which are capable of dealcoholizing only but not clearing your tissue samples. Okay, kaya nga, not all dealcoholizing agents are clearing agents and vice versa. Okay? So what are some reagents, okay, which we refer to as your dealcoholizing, okay, dealcoholizing agents only. So again, when we say dealcoholizing agents only, okay, so they allow the removal of your dehydrating agent, so in particular, your alcohols from your tissue. However, they do not make, okay, they do not make your tissue sample transparent or translucent. Okay, so what are these reagents? We have your chloroform. Okay, one is your chloroform, and then the other one is your carbon tetrachloride. Okay, so we have chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride. All right, so these are dealcoholizing agents only. Okay, so we also have reagents which are capable of clearing but not removing your alcohol. So we refer to them as your clearing agents only. Okay, so what are these reagents? So we have glycerin. Okay, we also have gum syrup. Okay, and lastly we have bronze solution. Okay, so bronze Wait a minute. Okay, so we have bronze solution. So again, these reagents are capable of making your tissues transparent or translucent. However, they do not remove our alcohol. Okay, so they do not remove sorry, they do not remove alcohol. Okay, so in order for a particular reagent to make your tissue sample transparent or translucent, it should be able to improve the refractive index of your tissue. Okay, so when we talk about improving the refractive index of your tissue, pang-clearing agents lang yon. So that means your de-alcoholizing agents, since they do not make your tissue samples transparent or translucent, they do not improve the refractive index of your tissue also. Okay? So when do we use your glycerin? Gone. Bakit gone? Okay. When do we use your glycerin, your gum syrup, and your bronze solution? So remember, they are considered to be clearing agents only. Okay. And so, during the processing or the processing that you are performing should not involve the use of your alcohols. Okay. So basically, your clearing agents or these three reagents, they are used when tissue, okay, is to be cleared. When your tissue sample is to be cleared directly from water. Okay? Such as in the preparation of your frozen sections. Okay? Ayan. So I repeat, clearing agents only. So they are used when tissue is to be cleared directly from water, such as in the case of your frozen sections. Okay, so remember that in the processing of your frozen sections, there is no de-alcoholization that is involved. Okay, because in the first place, you did not make use of an alcohol. Okay, you did not make use of an alcohol. All right, so ayan. So a common precautionary measure that we have to take note when it comes to the storage of your clearing reagents or of the reagents that we use for clearing and or de-alcoholization is that they should never be stored in large quantities. Okay? Why? Because these reagents are considered to be flammable liquids. Okay, so these reagents are considered to be flammable liquids. Thus, their storage, okay, in high volumes is contraindicated. Okay, so you should never store your reagents, your clearing or de-alcoholizing agents in large quantities or in high volumes. All right. So, all right. So, those are the different purposes, okay, as well as some precautionary measure, as well as the precautionary measure for the storage of your clearing and or de-alcoholizing agents. Okay. So now, what are the different applications of the process or of your clearing process? Okay. So, your clearing process, one application or importance or use in the laboratory is that it is utilized for clearing in embedding. Okay, it can also be, or this is also performed in clearing in mounting. And of course, the last application of clearing is to render transparency to your tissues. All right, so first let us discuss what is clearing in embedding. So clearing in embedding, so this is performed after the dehydration process and before the infiltration process. Okay? And the reagents that can be utilized in clearing in embedding are the following. We have your xylene, your toluene, dioxane, and lastly, we have your chloroform. Okay, so if you are going to look at the most important characteristic of the reagent which is to be used in clearing and embedding, your reagent should be miscible in your dehydrants or your dehydrating agents, and it should also be miscible in the embedding medium. So remember, I already emphasized the significance of miscibility of your reagents. Why does it have to be miscible? In order for your reagents to be compatible with one another. Okay, so yes, your reagent should be miscible in your dehydrating agents and your embedding medium. All right, so another application of clearing is clearing in mounting. So this type of clearing is performed after staining and before mounting or before cover slipping. Okay? And what is the purpose of clearing in mounting? So this one or this application serves to make your tissues or your microscopic preparations transparent or translucent. Okay, so I repeat, it serves to make your tissues or your microscopic preparations transparent or translucent. So what are the reagents that are utilized in clearing in mounting? So we have your xylene, your toluene, your terpineol, and your carboxylene. Okay? So other reagents which you can utilize in clearing in mounting include the following. We have your cedar wood. Okay, we have your cedar wood oil. Okay, we have your terpineol. Yes, and aviation gasoline. Okay, so when we say aviation, sorry, when we say aviation gasoline, so this is the gasoline that is used in airplanes, okay, or in any aircraft for that matter. All right, so these are additional reagents that you can use in clearing and mounting. Okay, so what should be the characteristics of your reagent so that they can be utilized for this for this purpose. So number one, your reagent, it should be miscible in your staining solution, and it should also be miscible in your mounting medium. Okay, so apart from that, since the purpose of clearing in mounting is to make your tissues or microscopic preparations transparent, another characteristic of the reagent is that it should improve the refractive index. Okay, it should improve also the refractive index of your tissue sample. Okay? Yes. So you have to make use of solvents with high refractive indices. Okay? And again, the last application of clearing is to render transparency to your tissues. Okay? So to render transparency to your tissues. So in this case, the most important factor that we have to consider is the refractive index of your reagent. Okay, so in particular, the refractive index of your reagent should be approximately equal to that of your tissue sample. All right, so I repeat, it should be approximately equal to that of your tissue sample. Okay. So what are the different characteristics of an ideal clearing agent? So these are the different characteristics. Number one, it should be miscible with your dehydrating agent and either infiltration or mounting medium. So kindly add also that if, for example, you are performing clearing in mounting, it should also be miscible with the staining, okay, solution that you are going to use. Another, it should remove alcohol quickly and clear quickly without over hardening your tissues. Apart from that, okay, it should not dissolve out your aniline dyes. So when we say aniline dyes, okay, it refers to the synthetic dyes that we oftentimes use during staining, okay? Of course, okay, of course, it should not dissolve out your aniline dyes. Why? Because this will lead to the leaching of your stain. So that means your tissue preparation will not be able to hold the stain, okay, that is utilized. So ganun siya. Parang mawawash off. Okay? Mawawash off po yung aniline dyes na ginamit mo. Alright? Ayan. It should not evaporate quickly in the water bath. It should evaporate quickly, however, in your paraffin oven. And it should, or it could be used in amounts at least 10 times the volume of the tissue. Remember that one of the precautionary measures that you have, or the general precautionary measure that you have to take note of with the use of your clearing agents is that they should never be stored in large amounts. Okay, so that's why if you are going to look at the required volume of your clearing agent or de-alcoholizing agent, 10 times the volume of the tissue sample is already adequate. Okay? Kasi nga, we don't want to store, okay, high volumes of your clearing agent in the laboratory. Okay? So this volume, okay, this adequate volume prevents the storage of large amounts of your clearing and or de-alcoholizing agents in the laboratory since they are flammable liquids. Okay? So now let us move on. What are the different factors that affect the clearing process? Okay, so we only have a few factors. So number one, we have boiling points. Okay, boiling points. So in particular, the boiling point of your clearing or de-alcoholizing agent, so this will affect the penetration of your paraffin wax, okay, or of your medium during infiltration. So what do we want when it comes to your boiling points? We want that your clearing and or de-alcoholizing agent should have a low boiling point. Okay? So if the boiling point is low, it will be more readily replaced by the paraffin or by whatever infiltrating or embedding medium you're going to utilize later on. Okay? So there is, yes, there is actually an exception to this particular rule. Kasi ang rule natin dito here is, the lower the boiling point, the more readily, replaced by your paraffin, okay, or by whatever medium you're going to use later on. Ako ha? So, ibig sabihin, pag mas mababa yung boiling point, mas madaling i-replace. Ayun. Okay? Mas madaling i-replace ng medium later on. Okay? So, the exception to this rule is your chloroform. So, in the case of your chloroform, even if it has a lower, okay, even if it has a lower boiling point as compared to your xylene, okay, it is not more readily replaced. Okay, so it is actually harder to be replaced by the paraffin or by whatever medium you're going to use later on. Okay, so ang exception niya dyan ay si chloroform. So another factor that will affect, okay, that will affect the clearing process is your viscosity. So in particular, we want your reagent to have a low viscosity. Okay? Ayaw niya. Okay, low viscosity. Okay? So the lower the viscosity of your reagent, the better the penetration. Okay? So of course, when we talk about viscosity, di ba? We learned this, I'm not sure when you learned it, but I'm sure you learned it in your previous subjects. So viscosity, this pertains to the ability of a particular solution or a particular liquid to resist flow. Tama ba ako? To resist flow. So that is viscosity. Okay, so if for example, a reagent has a low viscosity, okay, then it means that your reagent is more fluid. Thus, it will have a better penetration. Okay, so low viscosity, meaning the reagent is more fluid. Okay, so meaning also it is capable of penetrating your sample better. Okay, as compared if, for example, your reagent has a high viscosity. So what can you say about the fluidity of your reagent? In this case, it has a low fluid. Okay, low fluidity. Okay, so that means it's harder for your reagent to penetrate your tissue sample. Okay, ayan. And then the next one, we have your refractive index. So actually, your refractive index, okay, it will not have a bearing on the rate of infiltration or the rate of clearing. However, it will affect, okay, it will affect the quality of your tissue sections. Okay, so it will affect the quality of your tissue sections. All right, ayan. And of course, depending upon the reagent that you're going to use, so this will also affect the infiltration process, which is the next step after your clearing. So again, just like what I have mentioned a while back, some reagents are actually harder to replace by whatever infiltrating medium you're going to use later on. Okay, so those are the different factors which will affect clearing as well as the subsequent step following your clearing, which is your infiltration. All right, so what are the different reagents that we use for clearing and or dealcoholization? Okay, so first off, we have your silene. Your silene, this is otherwise referred to as your silol, and it is considered to be the most commonly used, okay, or the routinely used reagent for clearing. And apart from that, it is considered to be the most rapid, okay? It is considered to be the most rapid. Thus, we can use silene for urgent biopsies, okay? So we can use silene for urgent biopsies, okay? So the clearing process, okay, the clearing process, depending of course upon the size, okay, of your tissue sample as well as the consistency of your tissue sample, um, it can be achieved, okay, in a span of 15 to 30 minutes or 30 to 60 minutes. Okay, so very short. It requires a very short immersion in your silene. Okay, thus it is utilized for urgent biopsies. Okay, yes. And apart from that, okay, another advantage of your silene is that it can be utilized both for paraffin and celloidine processing. Okay, and in addition to that, also, your silene works best with absolute alcohol as the last dehydrant. Okay, so I repeat, it works best with absolute alcohol as the last dehydrant. Okay, so the problem with this is that since I mentioned when I mentioned in the previous video that the higher the concentration of your alcohol, the harder, tama ba ako? The more that it makes your tissues excessively hard. Okay, so that's the problem. Ayan. And since your silene, Okay, since your xylene also tends to make your tissues excessively hard and brittle, and then pag ang ginamit mo ay absolute alcohol pa, talagang magiging may possibility that your tissue sample will become excessively hard. Okay? Because, yun na nga, alcohol makes your tissues hard, your xylene makes your tissues hard also. Okay? Thus, your xylene, this is not utilized for your nervous tissue samples as well as your lymph nodes. Okay? So I repeat, because of the hardness that is brought about by the use of alcohol and xylene, okay, your xylene is not used for nervous tissue samples and lymph node samples. Okay? Yes. So apart from that, another disadvantage of your xylene, actually this can be an advantage and a disadvantage. Okay? Okay, the disadvantage is that it turns milky in the presence of high amounts of water molecules. Okay? And so, kailan ba nagkakaroon ng high concentration ng water molecules? So, this is observed when the dehydration process is incomplete rather. Okay? So, presence of water molecules, significant amount of water molecules will make your xylene turn milky. Okay, so this can also be an advantage in the sense that at least you would be able to know, di ba, if you were able to perform the dehydration process completely. Okay, so otherwise, your tissue sample might need additional immersion in your alcohol or in your dehydrating agent. Okay, so that is for your xylene. All right, so another reagent that we can use for clearing is your benzene. Okay, yes, favorite nila ito sa board exam. All right, so your benzene, it is a rapid acting. Okay, it is also rapid just like your xylene. Okay, it is also rapid just like your xylene. So the clearing process may be completed within 15 to 60 minutes. All right. However, if you are going to compare the effects of your benzene to your tissues, your benzene does not actually make your tissues hard and brittle. Okay, di ba? Your xylene, it makes your tissues excessively hard and brittle, but it's not the case when we are talking about your benzene. Your benzene, when it comes to its effect to your tissue, is actually better than xylene. So there is no hardness, there is no brittleness of your tissue. And as for the shrinkage of your tissue, it is only minimal. Okay, if you immerse it in your benzene. All right, so apart from that, since it is rapid acting, so your benzene penetrates and clears your tissue samples very rapidly. Okay, and so why are we not using benzene routinely? So this is because of the health hazards that it poses to the laboratory personnel. So in particular, your benzene is considered to be carcinogenic. Okay, and it causes aplastic anemia. Okay, so when we say aplastic anemia, all right, so the part of your body which will be affected is your when we talk about hypoplastic, hyperplastic, aplastic, okay, what are we referring to? What organ are we referring to? Or what structure are we referring to? We are referring to your bone marrow, right? So you discussed this in your hematology 1, di ba? Hypoplastic, hyperplastic, aplastic bone marrow, okay? So when we say aplastic anemia, your bone marrow is not capable of producing your blood cells. Okay, it is not capable of producing your blood cells because remember, when we talk about your bone marrow cellularity, there should be, okay, there should be an adequate proportion of hematopoietic cells that are present in your bone marrow in proportion to your adipose cells, right? So that's bone marrow cellularity. But since your benzene but since your benzene attacks your bone marrow, so it prevents the bone marrow from being able to produce your hematopoietic cells or your blood cells in particular. Okay, it makes your bone marrow aplastic. Okay, unable to produce now your blood cells. All right, so that's the problem. It is extremely toxic to man since it is carcinogenic. So that's why we cannot utilize benzene for routine processes or for routine purposes. Diba? Alangan naman. What's alangan in English? Cannot be. Diba? Cannot be that you are going to prioritize the quality of your tissue over the health of your personnel. Okay? Nakuha? So that's why we do not use it for routine purposes. However, if you disregard the health hazard that is caused by your benzene is actually better than your xylene. Okay, but again, we cannot do that. Okay, yes, we have to always consider the health hazards of your reagents. All right? Wait, mag-ano lang ako. All right, I'm back. Okay, so the next clearing agent that we will be discussing is your toluene. Okay, so your toluene, this is otherwise referred to as your toluol. Okay, so your xylene, it is otherwise referred to as your xylol. Your lol, your toluene is otherwise referred to as your toluol. Okay? But your benzene, there is no benzool. Walang benzool, lol. Okay, wala pong benzool. There is no such term as benzool or benzol. Okay? So I might put it in your exam or in your quiz later on, so be careful. We only have xylol and toluol, okay? But no benzool, no benzol. Sorry, tuwan-tuwa ako. Okay, yes, tuwan-tuwa ako talaga. All right, so what is the use of your toluene in histopath? So yan tuloy. Your toluene is utilized as a substitute for xylene and benzene. Okay. And apart from that, okay, take note that your toluene, it is actually preferred for the processing of brain samples. Okay. Remember, brain sample, it's an example, of course, of your nervous tissue sample. Can we use xylene for your brain sample? No. Why? Because it will be over-hardened. It will be excessively hardened, right? Can we use benzene? Yes, but it's extremely toxic. It is carcinogenic even. Okay? And so what's the best? Okay, what's not really the best, but among the three, which one is, of course, the best reagent among the three? It's your toluene. Okay, so it is the preferred clearing agent for the processing of your brain samples. Since you cannot use xylene for your nervous tissue samples, and you cannot use benzene since it is carcinogenic. Okay? Yes. So your toluene, it is lower as compared to your xylene and benzene. Okay? And actually, this becomes an advantage, especially if we are processing your brain samples. Why? Because it does not over-harden your tissue samples. And so, overnight immersion of your samples in toluene is possible. Okay, so I repeat, overnight immersion of your samples in toluene is possible since it does not over-harden your tissue samples. Okay, so what are the disadvantages of your toluene? Number one, it emits toxic fumes. Okay, so it emits toxic fumes even if it is not carcinogenic. Okay, it is not carcinogenic but it emits toxic fumes. Okay, so apart from that, um, apart from that, apart from that, your toluene, it acidifies in partially filled vessels. Okay, so it acidifies in partially filled vessels. So that means you have to be very careful when it comes to the storage of your toluene. Kasi nga, if your toluene acidifies, you can no longer use it for clearing, for the clearing process. Okay, so I repeat, you have to store it properly, otherwise it will acidify, particularly if you put it in partially filled vessels. So say for example, the volume capacity of your vessel or your storage container is 1 liter. And then, today, you're going to make use of toluene, 500 ml of toluene. Then, of course, the 1 liter capacity of your, or the toluene rather, that is present in your 1 liter container is no longer 1 liter. It is already 500 ml. And what do? You have to transfer it in a container with a maximum capacity of 500 ml. Otherwise, it will acidify. Okay, so that is what is meant. That is what is meant by your toluene acidifying in partially filled vessels. Okay, so you have to store them properly. All right. So again, another disadvantage of your toluene is that it is more expensive as compared to your xylene and your benzene. Okay, so I think this, yes, it is in your module. Um, the clearing process, okay, complete clearing is achieved within 1 to 2 hours with the use of your toluene. So it's a little bit slower, okay, as compared to your xylene and your benzene. All right. So reagents that we use for clearing and or de-alcoholizing or de-alcoholization. Actually, these ones, di ba, they are only de-alcoholizing, okay, agents. All right, so that means we cannot call them as clearing agents, but when you have your board exam later on, they are still referred to as clearing agents sa board exam. Okay, so yon. Yun na yon. But we all know, we should know that they do not actually promote clearing. They promote the removal of your dehydrating agent only. Okay, thus they are referred to as de-alcoholizing agents only. Okay, so your chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride. By the way, what is the chemical designation of your chloroform? It's CHCl3, right? CHCl3. Okay, so it contains, or one hydrogen atom is attached to your central carbon, and then we have three chlorine. Tama ba ako? Chlorine atoms attached to your central carbon, right? In carbon tetrachloride, we have 4 chlorine atoms attached to your central carbon. Okay, so from your MCHO. What are the uses of your chloroform in your carbon tetrachloride? So they are utilized for nervous tissues, lymph nodes, and embryos. Okay, actually, they have a wide range of application as for the type of specimen that we can immerse in your chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride. So they can be used for delicate specimens such as your nervous tissues, your lymph nodes, and your embryos. Okay? They can even be utilized for large specimens as large as 1 centimeter thick. And lastly, they can be utilized for tough tissue samples such as your skin, your skin is considered to be a tough tissue because um, it is composed of keratinized cells. Okay. The dermis also is composed of your, di ba, we have your dense irregular connective tissue. Okay, so what is in your dense irregular connective tissue? We have your collagen fibers. I think I mentioned before that if a particular structure or organ contains a lot of collagen fibers, then it is considered to be a tough tissue. Okay, yan. So your skin, it being keratinized and it containing a lot of collagen fibers, it is considered to be a tough tissue. So apart from that, we also have your fibroids. Okay, so again, from the term itself, fibroids, these are highly fiberized joke. Okay. They contain a lot of fibers also from the term itself, fibroids. Okay. And of course, your decalcified tissues because they are inherently hard. Okay. They are inherently hard. Ayan. So these are the different types of tissues that you can immerse in chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride. Okay. So what are some disadvantages of your chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride? Number one, both of them are toxic to the liver. Okay, I'm not sure if you discussed this in the pathology part of your human histology, but take note, diba? When chloroform or carbon tetrachloride is introduced to the body, so they are considered to be harmful and toxic. Okay, and so what organ is responsible in converting or in anong tawag dun? Detoxifying, okay? What organ is responsible in the detoxification of your chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride? It's your liver, okay? So your liver. So particularly the parenchyma of your liver, which is composed of your hepatocytes are the ones that convert or that detoxify your chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride. Okay? And so, since these substances have an affinity to your chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride because they have to be detoxified there, the toxicities which are attributed to your chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride affect your liver, your hepatocytes the most. Okay, so that's why they are toxic to your liver. Okay, so apart from that, so one problem which may be encountered with the use of your chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride is that your tissues tend to float. Okay, so your tissues tend to float out of your solution. Okay, and so what remedy can we do? So in this case, you can wrap your tissue samples with absorbent cotton or gauze. Dapat yan. Okay, so you wrap ay, hindi. Cotton gauze pala yun. Okay, sorry. Cotton is an adjective for gauze. Tama ba? Yes. Okay. So, wrap your tissue samples with absorbent cotton gauze. Okay? Not cotton or gauze, cotton gauze. So, the word cotton describes the gauze. Okay? Ayan. So, those are the things that you have to remember for your chloroform and your carbon tetrachloride. All right? So now let us move on to your Cedarwood Oil. Okay? So your Cedarwood Oil, it is probably one of the slowest acting clearing agent that we have in the laboratory. It's so slow that it takes about 2 to 3 days before the clearing process is complete. Okay, so what is the advantage of that? The advantage of that is since it is very slow, okay, since it is very slow, it causes it causes minimal tissue shrinkage. Okay, so that's the good thing about it. And since it causes minimal tissue shrinkage, it can be used for delicate samples such as in the case of your central nervous system tissues. It can also be used for smooth muscles and for skin samples. Okay, and for skin samples. So your cedarwood oil, it is utilized for both celloidine and paraffin embedded tissues. or celloidine and paraffin processing. Okay. Problems encountered with cedarwood oil, or problems associated with the use of your cedarwood oil, is that number one, it turns milky on prolonged storage. Okay? So it turns milky on prolonged storage. So alin pa yung nagmi-milky? So we have your xylene. Xylene also turns milky. However, the reason is different. So your xylene turns milky if there is a significant amount of water that is present in your tissue, right? So just like in the case of your incomplete dehydration. So the reason why your cedarwood oil turns milky is also different. So it turns milky upon prolonged storage of your cedarwood oil in the laboratory. Okay? So apart from that, another problem that is encountered when we make use of your cedarwood oil is that your tissue tends to float also. Okay, so your tissue sample tends to float. And what is the remedy for this? So you have to overlay absolute alcohol on top of your cedarwood oil to prevent the drying of your tissue sample. Okay, so say for example, this is your container. Okay, that's your container and this is your cedarwood oil. All right, so the problem with the use of your cedarwood oil is that your tissue tends to float. Okay, and of course, if a tissue sample is exposed to air, so this will result to the drying of that portion of your tissue sample. So in order to prevent the drying, okay, of the exposed portion of your tissue sample, so you can overlay, okay? So you can overlay absolute alcohol, okay? Absolute alcohol on top of your, okay, on top of your cedarwood oil. Yan. So overlay absolute alcohol on top of your cedarwood oil. All right. So another problem for your cedarwood oil is that it is very difficult to replace, or it is very difficult to be replaced by the infiltrating medium. Okay, so that's the problem. And so, in order to facilitate the removal of your cedarwood oil from your tissue sample, we immerse it in xylene or benzene in order to remove the cedarwood oil, and then after which you perform infiltration. Okay, so I repeat, your cedarwood oil, this is very difficult to be replaced by the infiltrating medium. Okay, so in order to remedy this problem, you have to immerse your cedarwood oil cleared tissue sample into your xylene or benzene. Okay, and this will now facilitate the infiltration process. Okay, so between xylene or benzene, which one is a better answer? It's actually your benzene. Nako ha, benzene is a better answer because it was the one which was, or it is the one that is mentioned by Gregorius. If I'm not mistaken, I got xylene in one of the references in histopath written by Anne Priest. Okay, written by Anne Priest. All right, yes. Okay, so in addition to these different clearing agents, or to these different reagents in general, so there are also other clearing reagents that we use, or clearing agents that we use in the laboratory. Okay, so we have aniline oil. So this is utilized for embryos, insects, and delicate specimens. Okay, and apart from that, your aniline oil, okay, it is capable of clearing also 70% alcohol. Ayan, so it is capable of clearing your 70%, 70% alcohol. Can you still remember your 70% alcohol? Yes, of course. Your 70% alcohol is the last, okay, dehydrating agent that we use for your delicate samples. That's why your aniline oil is also utilized for your delicate samples. Okay, remember your delicate samples, it cannot be immersed in your saline because it will be excessively hardened. Okay, so in place of saline or in place of your toluene, you can also make use of your aniline oil. Okay, so another, we have your clove oil. So one thing that you have to remember for your clove oil is that it has a lot of disadvantages actually. Number one, it is a slow acting clearing agent. Number two, it is prone to adulteration. And number three, it tends to remove your aniline dyes. Okay, so in addition to that, we also have your dioxane. So we mentioned during our discussion in dehydration that your dioxane can be used. Ba't ba yellow ang gamit ko? Saglit lang, class. Okay? It can be used for dehydration and clearing. Okay? So another, we also have your amyl acetate. So your amyl acetate is utilized for large tissues and your embryo. Your terpineol, otherwise referred to as your oil of lilac. Okay? So terpineol, lilac. Oh, bahala ka kung anong gusto mo. Lilac or lilac. Okay? For me, I'm more comfortable with lilac. Okay? So terpineol, lilac. Parang pangit. Okay, terpineol, otherwise referred to as your oil of artificial oil. Okay, so otherwise referred to as your, saglit lang, class. Okay, otherwise referred to as your artificial oil of lilac. Okay, so we have your terpineol. So this is utilized as a substitute for your cedarwood oil. Okay, another, we have your methyl benzoate and methyl salicylate. So this is utilized for electron microscopy. This is utilized for, double embedding. So later on, I will be discussing what is double embedding. Okay. So double embedding, we have methyl benzoate and methyl salicylates. Okay, and of course we have our clearing agents only. So we have glycerin, gum syrup, bronze solution. So again, if the clearing process is performed directly from water. So if you are going to clear your tissue samples from water, so that means no dehydration is involved. Okay, so you can make use of your glycerin, gum syrup, and bronze solution. So again, what is the purpose of using these three? So they serve to improve the refractive index of your sample without dealcoholization. Okay, so another, we have your carbolsilene. Ayan, carbolsilene. Okay. So your carbolsilene, this is composed of 1 part phenol plus 3 parts silene. Okay, so 1 part phenol plus 3 parts silene, and it is utilized for materials, okay, for materials that are difficult to clear, such as in the case of thick mucinous Papa Nicolau smears. Okay, so I repeat, such as in the case of thick mucinous. Ibig sabihin, marami siyang mucin. Okay, thick mucinous Papa Nicolau smears. Okay, so this is an example of a material which is difficult to clear. Okay, ayan. So how do we use your carbolsilene for clearing? Okay, for clearing. So there are certain precautionary measures that you have to take note of. Okay, so number one, you should avoid leaving your slides in carbolsilene for more than 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, for more than 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so apart from that, you have to thoroughly rinse your carbolsilene cleared tissue sample in silene, or you have to thoroughly rinse your slide pala, kasi slide ang ginagamit dito eh. Your slide or your smears in silene before you mount. okay, before you are going to mount, okay? And apart from that, you have to ensure that all traces of carbolic acid are removed. Otherwise, your carbolic acid will cause leaching out of your stain. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, your tissue section will not be able to keep, kumbaga, the stain that it has if carbolic acid is still present in your tissue sample. Okay? Or your tissue section or your tissue components will not be able to maintain the stain that it has if carbolic acid is still present. Okay? So other clearing agents, we have oil of bergamot, phenol in alcohol, creosote, okay? And we also have newer clearing agents. We have your limonene, which is from the term itself, limon, but hindi lemonine. Limonene ang nakalagay. Okay, limonene. Okay, so this is an aromatic oil that is present in citrus, okay, in citrus peels. And we also have your clearite. So this is composed, or if you're going to look at the structure of your clearite, it is made up of a long chain of aliphatic hydrocarbons. Okay, so those are the different clearing agents which may also be utilized, okay, for this step in tissue processing. Okay, and that ends our discussion for clearing. All right, so for our meeting on Tuesday, so we will be having your first quiz in the lecture. Okay, we will be having your first quiz in the lecture, and the coverage will be dehydration as well as your clearing. Okay, yes. So I hope you learned something from this video, and I'll see you again next time. All right, so have a great day. Have a fruitful day if you are watching this during daytime, and have a restful night if you are watching this during nighttime. Okay, ayan. So I'll see you again. Bye.